Ever found yourself staring at your Newton app, that little Bitcoin transaction seemingly stuck in limbo, and wondered, seriously, how long is this going to take? You're not alone. In the fast-paced world of cryptocurrency, where every minute can feel like an eternity, understanding transaction times is crucial. Whether you're a seasoned crypto veteran or just dipping your toes into the digital asset waters with Newton, knowing what to expect when you hit that send button for your Bitcoin is essential for peace of mind and effective financial planning. So, let's dive deep into the factors that influence how long your Bitcoin transaction will take on Newton. It's not as simple as a fixed number, but by understanding the underlying mechanisms, you can gain a much clearer picture. First and foremost, it's important to recognize that Newton itself doesn't control the speed of Bitcoin transactions in their entirety. Newton acts as a facilitator, connecting you to the Bitcoin network. The real engine room determining transaction speed is the Bitcoin blockchain itself. Think of the blockchain as a global, decentralized ledger where all Bitcoin transactions are recorded. For a transaction to be considered complete, it needs to be included in a block and confirmed by the network. This brings us to the concept of block confirmation. When you initiate a Bitcoin withdrawal from Newton, Newton broadcasts this transaction to the Bitcoin network. Miners, who are essentially the record keepers of the blockchain, then compete to solve complex cryptographic puzzles. The miner who solves the puzzle first gets to add a new block of verified transactions to the blockchain. Your transaction is included in one of these blocks. However, one block isn't usually enough. For security and immutability, Bitcoin transactions typically require multiple confirmations. The more confirmations a transaction has, the more difficult it becomes to reverse, making it more secure. Newton, like many other exchanges and platforms, will wait for a certain number of confirmations before considering your Bitcoin withdrawal complete and reflecting it in the recipient's wallet. Now, the big question, how long does this whole confirmation process take? This is where things get a bit variable. The average time to mine a new Bitcoin block is approximately 10 minutes. However, this is just an average. Sometimes a block might be found in a few seconds, and other times it might take significantly longer. Therefore, the total time for your Bitcoin transaction on Newton depends heavily on the number of confirmations Newton requires for a withdrawal to be considered complete. This number isn't fixed and can sometimes be influenced by network conditions and security considerations. While Newton aims to process withdrawals efficiently, they prioritize the security of your funds, which is why they wait for a sufficient number of confirmations. Another critical factor influencing transaction time is the Bitcoin network congestion. Think of the Bitcoin network like a highway. When there's less traffic, fewer transactions being broadcast, your transaction is likely to get picked up by miners and included in a block relatively quickly. However, when the network is busy, a high volume of transactions, there's congestion, and miners might prioritize transactions with higher transaction fees. This leads us to the concept of Bitcoin transaction fees. When you initiate a withdrawal from Newton, Newton will typically handle the network fees associated with broadcasting your transaction. However, the fee they include can influence how quickly miners prioritize your transaction. If the network is congested and the fee attached to your transaction is relatively low, miners might prioritize transactions with higher fees, potentially leading to a longer confirmation time for your withdrawal. Newton aims to strike a balance between ensuring timely withdrawals and keeping fees reasonable for its users. They will typically set a network fee that is competitive enough to get your transaction processed within a reasonable time frame under normal network conditions. So, what does this all mean in practical terms for your Bitcoin withdrawal on Newton? While it's impossible to give an exact time frame every single time, here are some general expectations. Under normal network conditions, you might see your Bitcoin withdrawal from Newton confirmed within 30 minutes to a few hours. This time frame accounts for the time it takes for Newton to process the withdrawal on their end and the time it takes for the Bitcoin network to achieve the required number of confirmations. However, during periods of high network congestion, these times can unfortunately extend. If the Bitcoin network is experiencing a surge in transaction volume, it might take several hours or even longer for your withdrawal to be fully confirmed. It's also worth noting that the first confirmation usually takes the longest, as this is when your transaction is first included in a block. Subsequent confirmations happen as new blocks are added to the blockchain, generally following the average block time of around 10 minutes. So, how can you get a better sense of the current network conditions and potential delays? There are several online resources and blockchain explorers that provide real-time data on Bitcoin network congestion, transaction fees, and average confirmation times. Keeping an eye on these resources during times of high volatility or significant market activity can give you a heads up about potential delays. Newton also typically provides updates or notifications within their app if there are significant network delays affecting withdrawals. It's always a good idea to check the Newton app or their support channels if you're experiencing an unusually long wait time. In summary, the time it takes for your Bitcoin transaction to complete on Newton isn't a fixed number. It's influenced by a combination of factors, primarily the Bitcoin network itself, including the average block time, the number of confirmations Newton requires for withdrawals, and the overall network congestion. While Newton strives to process withdrawals efficiently, the ultimate speed is dictated by the dynamics of the decentralized Bitcoin blockchain. Under normal circumstances, you can expect your withdrawal to be confirmed within a few hours, but during periods of high network activity, it could take longer. Staying informed about network conditions and checking for updates from Newton can help manage your expectations. With that said, thanks for watching and until next time.